Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the November 10th Technical Advisory Committee for the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization. Thank you for sharing the agenda here with us. The first is some housekeeping items. If Mr. Parsons, if you could read the statement regarding virtual meetings.
Yes, we have had some clarification that is not actually required to be read anymore, as long as we have it publicly shared in our agenda packet. So we can speed up the meeting a little bit in that regard, unless anyone has questions about virtual participation or public engagement opportunities.
Sounds great. I think we can move on. We probably most have it memorized at this point. So if we're going to move on to roll call and certification of quorum. Ms. Mueller, would you like to do roll call, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start with Town of Ashland. Ms. Amos.
Here.
Mr. Tucker. Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith. Ms. Walker.
Here.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Kilduff. Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas. Mr. Flagg.
Here.
Henrico County, Ms. Meidler.
Here.
Mr. Yor. New Kent County, Ms. Leduc.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Powhatan County, Mr. Pompey.
Here.
Mr. Chardine.
Here.
City of Richmond, Ms. Clark. Mr. Bridewell.
Here.
Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
Mr. Sparks. GRTC Transit System, Ms. Torres.
Here.
Ms. Del Ross.
Here.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Mr. Ariel.
Here.
Ride Finders, Ms. Tisdale. Mr. O'Keefe. Richmond Metropolitan Transportation Authority, Ms. Simmons. VDOT, Ms. McAdory.
Here, good morning.
Good morning. And Mr. Herman.
Here.
I think I just want to go through the people that didn't respond real quick. I don't know who joined while I was reading. Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Barb won't be here. I'll be covering for her today.
Okay. Goochland County, Mr. Kilduff. Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas.
Yes, I just joined, Nicole.
Thank you. Henrico County, Mr. Yor. City of Richmond, Ms. Clark. Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge.
Hi, Nicole. This is Dirana. I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, thank you. Ride Finders, Ms. Tisdale. Mr. O'Keefe. And Richmond Metropolitan Transportation Authority, Ms. Simmons. Madam Chair, that concludes the roll call for attendance.
Nora, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I am. So start over. Thank you for doing the roll call for us. So we're moving on to item number 1, consideration of amendments to the action meeting agenda. I don't know that we need to take action on adding this, but in speaking with Mr. Parsons yesterday, I mentioned that perhaps under transportation agency updates, we should go ahead and add Ride Finders and GRTC, as they often do have updates. And so in the future, that should be added to the agenda. And so under item number 9, if they have any items, we can cover that when we get to it. Any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, moving on to item number 2, approval of the October 13th, 2020 TAC action meeting minutes. Were there any amendments or questions about the minutes that were included in your packet? Hearing none, do I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
Madam Chair, this is Diana. I make a motion for approval of the minutes.
Do I have a second?
This is Chessa, second.
Okay, so I have a first for approval from Dirona and a second from Chessa. Ms. Mueller, could you call roll, please?
Yes, thank you. The committee will now be voting on item number 2, the approval of the October 13th meeting minutes. Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Aye.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Walker.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas.
Aye.
Henrico County, Ms. Meidler.
Aye.
New Kent County, Ms. Leduc.
Aye.
Powhatan County, Mr. Pompey.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Ms. Clark.
Aye.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Aye.
GRTC, Ms. Torres.
Aye.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Aye.
And VDOT, Ms. McAdory.
Aye.
That concludes the roll call for item number 2.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the open public comment period. I don't see any items in the chat. Chet, do you have any comments to share?
I do not. Nicole, have you seen anything?
No, there were no comments in the email.
Thank you. So moving on, item number 4, the TAC chairman's report. I don't have a lot to share. I do like taking this opportunity to tell you all about Ashland. So we moved into our new town hall right across the street from the old town hall last week. Yesterday was our first day. So if anyone's ever in town, I'd love to give you a tour. We're all very excited about our new town hall. The next item I wanted to share, hopefully several of you have either read about or you were able to attend the Fall Line, somewhat of a ribbon cutting naming ceremony. I thought the governor's office did a really good job putting that together, and we were really pleased to be able to host that in Ashland. So again, if you're in town, after I give you the town hall tour, I can take you down and show you the trolley line. It's really impressive. There you go. Little pins, there's t-shirts out there. Thank you, Chet. That's all I have. So moving on to the TPO update, Mr. Parsons.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to give a brief update. Our current work efforts. Nora just mentioned the Fall Line Trail, or the Fall Line, if you're in the know. So that that really fits in well with a lot of the efforts that the TPO has been working on with our regional bike ped plan update, the Ashland Trolley Line Trail, and our work with many of you on smart scale applications. There were a number of Fall Line adjacent or inclusive project applications for smart scale funding this year. So we're hopeful that we get some good results from those applications. We continue work on the long range transportation plan, Connect RVA 2045, and had a great meeting with our advisory committee in October, and we are looking forward to the next meeting with that group to talk about finalizing vision, goals, and strategies. And our last survey, we had almost 1,000 responses. So we're very pleased with the virtual participation that we've seen. And no matter what happens with quarantine and work from home, I think virtual participation is a huge asset to our agency as we try to encourage folks to take more interest in regional planning efforts. So we are continuing to expand our reach in the virtual realm. Other updates, we continue to work with our Vision Zero work group and our public transportation work group to help inform those various disciplines as we think about including those types of considerations in all of our work efforts. The public transportation work group in particular met on November 2nd, and we're able to provide, I think, valuable feedback to GRTC as they refine and move closer to selecting a consultant to develop the regional public transportation plan that is required by the legislation that established the Central Virginia Transportation Authority. So using TPO efforts like the Public Transportation Work Group is helping to inform not just the TPO, but the CVTA as well. And we're excited about the next steps in working with GRTC on that plan. The RSTP CMAC work group, this is a new work group that's, I think, had a couple meetings now and are working to revise and update the RSTP CMAC guidelines that have been in place, I believe, since 2013. That was the last revision to those guidelines. So that group is continuing to meet over this next year to have a revised recommendation for new guidelines ready for approval prior to the next RSTP CMAC cycle, which I think would be next August, or August of 21. So that's coming up. The other update is CVTA. So a number of you are taking part in the CVTA TAC, but the TAC and the Finance Committee both met yesterday, and the TAC is making great progress. I think that we're moving forward now with recommendations for the December 4th CVTA meeting on the scope for a transit governance report. And assuming that there is approval at the December 4th meeting, we'll be able to put that scope out and look for proposals from qualified consultants to help us with that transit governance report and getting that done in the next 6 months. We are also working on, I gave a brief update to the TAC yesterday, following the LRTP Advisory Committee meeting and the work that Sulab's done in terms of explaining project prioritization and how we're approaching that. So we're going to be seeking feedback over the next few months on that process and refining that through the Advisory Committee, most likely, and moving towards prioritization tools. The Finance Committee is talking about banking policies and financial advisors and putting all those tools in place for the authority to have all of those doors open when revenues are available for distribution to member governments in the 50%, for regional funding in the 35%, and then to GRTC regional transit projects in the remaining 15%. So I think that's progress is being made, and it's being done very deliberately and thoughtfully. So we're ready to support the Finance Committee and the authority as they take their next steps. Madam Chair, I think that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Mr. Parsons. The next item is a presentation, no action required at this point, a VTrans update with the prioritization of VTrans midterm needs. Mr. Wishman, I think, is on the phone to give us that update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I'm also going to attempt to share my screen. So we'll see if we can get the technology to work, Chet, while I do this. And thank you all for having me here today. I know I was with this group back in September with an update that's sort of similar to the update I'll provide today, in that I'll talk a little bit about the background and context and significance of this draft policy for prioritization of VTrans midterm needs. But we have a little bit more information out there. Now we've released the draft policy document, as well as a draft technical guide document for review and comment, as well as we've developed the results, so the actual output of the prioritization, and have those available through an online map that we hope over this month during November that folks will go in and sort of interact with the documents and the results and provide us some feedback. So that's really the main push today is to let you all know about that opportunity, demo the website a little bit. And although no action is required, action will be suggested that you provide us some comments. So this is sort of the outline. I'll talk a little bit about background context, but really want to spend the bulk of the time looking at the resources and sort of next steps. So I've shown this slide to this group before. VTrans is Virginia's statewide multimodal transportation plan, and it's an iterative process. We do it every 4 years, and we go through a number of steps. So right now we're sort of in the pillar 2 of identifying and then prioritizing the VTrans midterm needs. So that's the bulk of my presentation today. Just looking ahead to next year, we'll be working more in the long-term needs identification and then into recommendation strategic actions in 2021 as well. So why do we, as far as, why do we engage and do VTrans? So there are a number of state and federal requirements that VTrans as the state's transportation plan sort of attempts to fulfill. And one of those, I guess, that we worked through last year with you all was the identification of capacity and safety needs that could then be used to connect the statewide plan to the statewide programming prioritization process and smart scale. So that's maybe one of the core deliverables of VTrans that most folks are familiar with, and what we're doing now is essentially an extension of that, and I'll talk about the prioritization mainly today. And then one other key requirement that we like to sort of highlight, this comes from the state code, is that VTrans is meant to be sort of a standalone, unique exercise, have its own independent utility, and not simply be sort of an aggregation of other local, regional, or modal plans. So we are giving, with VTrans, giving the statewide system sort of a fresh look. So the fresh look, what we're focusing on is really problem identification. So where do we have needs for investment? So we do this over 2 different time horizons. So the focus we've had so far has been on the midterm needs, which is sort of the nearer term, just outside the 6-year improvement program period, where we can be screening smart scale requests, prioritizing revenue sharing projects, and really looking at the needs that we have, based on today's sort of known data, the needs that we have and how we can sort of provide for some solutions in the near term. As far as board actions on the midterm needs, in January of 2020, the board adopted a policy for how we identified the midterm needs. So last year, you all helped us sort of develop that approach. We had some workshops all around the state, and we've had the needs in place since January. And at that time in January, the board asked our office to develop, a prioritization method for the midterm needs. So that's really what we've been working on up to now here in 2020. I mentioned next year we'll be getting more into the longer term needs. That assessment will be more, based on some of the trends and some of the things that are less predictable about the further out time periods, having some scenario planning, thinking about different policy recommendations. So that'll be the focus of things we do in the next year. So this is a sort of an important slide to understand, the significance of the prioritization and this policy. So what the board has been considering, the CTB has been considering, is using this policy to inform a sort of project development pipeline. So there have been 2 discussions of this at the CTB. One was in May at the workshop meeting in May. Another was in July at the workshop meeting. So the idea here is that through a prioritized set of needs, we could, in the Commonwealth, better target our limited dollars that we have available for studies, project development activities, or other advanced planning activities. So the real purpose here is, when the state is spending dollars on something like interchange modification report or interchange justification report, or one of these big studies that we're targeting those IMRs and IJRs to the interchanges that are actually of the highest priority. So that's sort of the premise behind this and what we're pursuing now. From the policy perspective, what I'll show today is not only sort of the draft policy guide and the technical guide, but then also sort of the output of this first go at the prioritization. So in terms of the kind of the methodology, so this gets into more the implementation of the policy. What we've done is sort of develop a 4-step approach, and I have slides that go into each step. So on this slide, I'm really just going to gloss over and give a high-level review of the steps. So with step 1, we're really just establishing sort of the buckets within which we'll be doing prioritization. So the policy consists of a statewide prioritization and then of a construction district-based prioritization. I'll go into that in the next slide. Within step 2, what we did is sort of brought in additional data. We did start with the sort of universe of VTrans needs. So there, in this prioritization, there are sort of no new needs that are being brought in. This is all sort of the starting point for this is the identified VTrans needs that we worked with last year. So what we did is brought in additional data to sort of prioritize within each need category. So you have congestion needs, bicycle access needs, safety needs. You have these different categories of needs. Within step 2, what we were doing is sort of ranking within each category. So you would know within each construction district what's the highest priority congestion need, what's the highest priority bicycle access need. So looking at each need category in a little more depth and independent of one another. Within step 3 is where we sort of brought everything together and, on a segment by segment basis, tried to understand, when you have multiple needs in one segment, how to sort of bring that together. We did apply some weighting, which I'll describe in a few slides. And essentially with step 3, the idea was to aggregate everything together and come up with priority segments rather than within the categories. And then step 4, which I'll describe again later, was a sort of a slight adjustment at the end to account for some factors that weren't included in the needs assessment itself. So here there was slight adjustments made for if there was a co-located bridge in need of repair, pavement in need of repair, or some vulnerability to sea level rise, inland riverine flooding, or storm surge. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a few slides as well. So just to go over again what we just did with step 1, the idea was to sort of create different geographies of prioritization. And really one of the models that we used for this is the SMART scale process, which looks at a statewide high priority bucket and a district grant bucket. So same premise here. We were doing a prioritization for statewide that is really just honing in on the corridors of statewide significance travel market. And, comparing I-95 through the Richmond region to, I-81 in Stanton to I-66 in Northern Virginia, and really just comparing these, kind of critical statewide corridors to one another. Within the construction district priority, we use the travel market needs for regional networks, safety, and then the IEDA needs, and essentially compared all the segments within a district to one another. So this would be, comparing segments in the Plan RVA area to the Crater PDC to the Southside PDC, all the all the network within Richmond district being compared to one another. So I mentioned step 2 is where we were prioritizing within each category. So what we did to evaluate this was brought in essentially 2 measures for each category. One for severity, so how acute is the need Do you have, depending on the measure, do you have really high congestion versus low or moderate congestion? With the magnitude, what we were considering here is sort of the number of users of the system that are being impacted. So the combination of these two gives us a good sense of not only how bad is the problem, what's the magnitude of that bad problem. So this is sort of the essence of how we evaluated each category, and the technical guide goes into a lot of detail on the exact data that was used, the years of analysis, for those who are interested in digging in a little bit more. So step 3 I mentioned is where we sort of brought everything together, weighing and aggregating across categories. So for this example that we're showing, you have the segment on the left of your screen where there's only one need present, but it's a very high need for transit access. Again, no other needs are present. And then on the segment on the right, we have multiple needs in place: congestion, bicycle access, pedestrian access, and safety. But none of them are sort of very high. We have high, medium, and low needs across multiple categories. So the idea within step 3 was to sort of create a platform to be able to compare, this as one example, but countless other examples of how segments may differ, and to bring these together and sort of calculate one score for a segment that defines the priority. So to do this, we also here took a cue from SmartScale within the district priority scoring. We applied weighting that's tied to the area types from SmartScale. So this is one of the concepts that was developed for the policy that we would like to receive some feedback on. Is this working for this purpose? So here what we did is sort of multiplied by factors depending on the area type. So if you're in area type A, you're going to be more of your score is going to be contributed to from congestion and reliability. Whereas if you're in area type D, which is more rural, a significant portion of your score would be contributed from the safety category. So again, I'm sort of going over this very high level. I'd be happy to answer questions about it. But I'll mention later on some other opportunities we have to engage in this with this content. So finally, step 4, this is where we took the aggregated and weighed score and sort of made slight adjustments for these co-located bridge pavement or exposure to flooding needs. So the results of this, again, what I've talked about before is sort of the methodology, which is subject to comments and feedback and change at this point. We also have some tools available, and I'm going to attempt to flip over to my web browser now. So maybe if someone on the call, Chet or Nora, could confirm that you're now seeing my web browser view.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So what we've tried to do is make the results sort of accessible. Unfortunately, this year we aren't able to come and meet you all at a meeting space and sort of roll out the maps like we were able to do in 2019. But we wanted to provide the resources on our website to allow some engagement around this process. So our website is VTrans.org. To navigate to some of this material, you would go to midterm planning and then down here to midterm needs prioritization. And what you would find there is a web page that sort of walks you through the steps that I just walked you through, but it also connects you to some other resources, talks about sort of the timeline. And then most importantly, I wanted to draw attention to the links to these documents. So we have the draft policy guide and draft technical guide that are out there for public review and comment through November 30th. So I'm going to attempt to click a tab. So this is the policy guide. It's a shorter, more executive summary level document. It's 21 pages. And then for the folks who want to really dig in, we have our technical guide that's 60 pages, which is again going into the data sources and actual sort of methods that were applied, tools that were used, and that sort of detail. Also on this website, for the real sort of power users, we have a ArcGIS map package. So I'm sure Sulab will be one who goes in and downloads this ArcGIS map package and sort of digs into it. But that's also available if you have folks, more technical users that want to dig in a little bit more detail. But as far as reviewing the results, we wanted to make this available through interactive mapping and try to offer some opportunities to understand the data and then provide some comments. So we have the two tabs, one tab for the statewide priority locations and the other for construction district. And you're able to sort of navigate around the map, zoom in, take a look at where we have priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, and priority 4 locations. And so these would be sort of the locations, the post step 4 priorities. You can also go through and take a look at within step 2, I mentioned this is where we were prioritizing within need categories. So you can click through and understand, just where we have congestion needs and how those were sort of racked and stacked around the Richmond region, specific to that need category. You can also here interact with some of these buttons. So the question mark button will allow you to pull up sort of a little bit of description of the method. So what was the severity measure that was used? What was the magnitude measure that was used? And then where were the cuts made? So, for prioritization, we had to decide, what amount of mileage was going to be very high, medium, and low. So these are the sorts of things where some feedback would be worthwhile, on the methods themselves, as well as if you see something that on the map that doesn't seem to, jive with what you all see on the ground, that sort of feedback would also be helpful. So you have the ability here to add a location-specific comment. So you could click this button here and provide a location-specific comment. Say I have a comment here, and you could describe, what would be helpful to us maybe is if you see something that, again, doesn't match your understanding of reality, it may help us to kind of hone in if we have something going on here. So that's sort of the quick review of this. There's also other ways to provide some feedback. You can send us an email at any time. Again, this public comment opportunity is going to go through the end of the month, November 30th. So let me go back to my slide deck. And I've provided Chet with this slide deck. I know we're kind of cutting close on time. I do want to allow some time for questions. So we've also done some summary statistics. You can take a look at these on the version that Chet provides a link to, of how many miles fall into each priority within each district. So, for this graphic, it's really sort of a function of the number of miles of needs in each district. So you see Richmond District actually has the most miles of priority 1 needs of any district, but that's, again, just a function of the Richmond District has the most miles of needs overall. So this comparison is useful just to take a look at the results. This is the statewide map, statewide priority map. So this one is actually a little bit more instructive because, all these segments were compared to one another statewide. So you can get a feel for on the quarters of statewide significance, within which district did the most number of miles sort of rise to priority 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this can also be sort of reviewed in the mapping format as well. All right, so a few just kind of final thoughts. One thing we try to really express and emphasize when we talk with folks is that what we've done with the needs is problem identification. It's not necessarily geared towards, at this point, solutions or recommendations. That's sort of where the project pipeline and the programming processes kind of step in, and the work that you all do to develop projects. So a couple points to keep in mind, 1 and 2, is that we understand that a problem, especially how we've represented them on the roadway network, doesn't necessarily dictate what the solution may be, right? There may be a need along 95 in Fredericksburg that could be addressed, better addressed by a TDM solution or a rail solution. So the idea with the policy is to leave the solutions flexible to, other locations, not necessarily being, a project at the exact location of a need, but if it can address the need, it can help to meet that. Another point here, number 3, is that this is our first sort of crack at using a data-driven prioritization. So we're following this mantra of continuous improvement. So the idea is that the policy will really be representative of what was meant to be done. So if there are errors in the maps that are found at a later point, the policy guide and then the method that have been adopted take precedence. So that's just something to keep in mind as you look at this. Is that, gearing the comments maybe more towards the policy and technical guide could be more fruitful, although indicating where we may have errors in the map would help us definitely to improve. And then a final sort of plug here is for, we've talked about studies and project development activities. So OIP will be sort of piloting or putting out a new technical assistance, planning assistance program, akin to what we called the UDA planning grants before. So this will be planning assistance that's for UDA, both designation and then planning for the UDAs themselves. But this program is meant to be a little bit more expansive. So it's the Growth and Accessibility Planning Program. It's meant to be a little bit more expansive to address other planning challenges that are represented in the CTB's implementation plan from VTrans 2040. So more information will be coming up on this one, but just something to kind of keep in mind. You should be hearing from us soon about this. Okay, last few slides. So next steps, where we are now is the release of the draft policy, and we've had a couple webinars, and we're going out and speaking with folks all around the state, trying to generate some comments. And the idea is that we'll take those comments and the feedback we've received to the CTB next month at their workshop meeting, and have them offer a chance to respond to those comments and review the draft policy, with the idea being that in January of 2021, we can request action on the policy. So in terms of the webinar opportunities, I mentioned we've hosted 2 workshops so far. I know that a number of you have been involved, participated in those. So the slide deck has a link to the recordings of those if you weren't able to attend. We have 2 upcoming workshops. One's this Friday at 10 a.m. And another one next Tuesday at 1:30. And there's a registration link here. And those will be geared more towards Q&A. So after today, if you have a chance to look at things and have some questions that you want us to respond to, please do plan to join those calls, and we can have some discussion around those. And then I mentioned before, the public comment period is open through November 30th. So there were a 3-person team, Jatinder Ramchandani, Katie Schwing, and myself. And Katie and I sort of split up the state. I'm the representative to the Richmond district. So if you do have questions or comments, you can feel free to call me or email me. If you want to send something, for all of us for the comments, we have a email address, comment@vtrans.org, where we can also receive some comments. So that's my presentation today. I'm happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair, and appreciate the time to speak with the group.
Thank you for that. Great information. I know a lot of hard work's gone into this. Do we have any questions for Chris?
Hey, Chris, this is Chessa.
Hey, Chessa.
Just a quick question, and I may have missed this leading up to this, but when was the determination made that these needs would now be used to prioritize revenue sharing applications?
So it's not a determination necessarily. It's actually, if I understand it correctly, I'm not the expert on this, but there's language in the code that speaks to the revenue sharing program, and within their analysis or the process they go through to evaluate applications, it speaks to the VTrans needs. So let me see if that language is on my slide.
And that was a change.
So it's not,
or
no, it's not necessarily a new. So I think this is the requirement here.
okay. There you go.
A project's funding request submitted for VDOT revenue sharing receives a priority consideration. So it's more of a boost. It's not like with Smart Scale. It's not like a screen in criteria. I think it's like an either or. If you can meet a VTrans need or accelerate a project in a locality's capital CIP. So it's being used more frequently now or emphasized more frequently now, but it's been in the code.
Okay.
I think most localities have tended to go towards the or accelerates a project in
Yes.
locality CIP, but it's sort of another opportunity.
It's another data point that can be used, but it's not.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Chris. This is Sulabh. I just have a question relating this with Smart Scale. So how does the prioritization here in VTrans relate to the project prioritization down in Smart Scale? Is there a connection? Like definitely a need which is high in VTrans might definitely score high in Smart Scale project prioritization, but is there a direct need if any need is prioritized here that gets some extra points towards Smart Scale? Is there something of that sort?
So at this point, what's been discussed, with the CTB is the prioritization would be tied more towards this study pipeline, the project development pipeline. I think your inference is correct that if you have a high priority VTrans need segment, that you're probably going to check a lot of boxes for Smart Scale as well. But as far as like bonus points in the Smart Scale scoring, or only score priority 1 projects or anything like that, that's really hasn't been part of the discussion. I think there are some stipulations in the code about and this could get kind of complicated, but I think the code speaks to the screen in for Smart Scale being based on VTrans needs, so it doesn't sort of contemplate a prioritized need. So I guess what I could say is that I'm not really in control of the policymaking process, but at this point the discussion has been around the project pipeline, project development activities as being the primary use for the prioritization.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, last call. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call if you do have any questions after, or join on Friday or next Tuesday. So thank you, Nora.
Thank you. Okay, our next item number 7, is the 2020 Richmond Regional Structural Inventory and Assessment Report. Sulabh, I think, are you going to handle that for us?
Yes, and let me share my screen as well. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to present you the final report for the 2020 Richmond Regional Structural Inventory and Assessment Report. The last update towards this report was given to the TAC, I guess in June, where we had discussed about the initial data findings. So just to give you a background again, RRTPO began tracking the regional structures since 2014. And a lot of things have changed since then. The very definition of how the bridge is considered for rehabilitation funds as well as replacement funds have totally changed. Um, so the 2020 report is the update to 2015 report after 5 years. We have tied this document to the Connect RVA 2045 plan as a complementary document, and have decided that we update this document every 5 years with the LRTP cycle, which is every 5 years. The data, the performance measures data required for the bridge or the structures would be analyzed every year though. So the primary source of data for this was the VDOT database of structures by construction district. And we just filtered out the 9 localities of our Richmond region from the Richmond district. This is a snapshot of the data, and we took the date January 15, 2020. So that's anything after this, any changes after that date hasn't been captured in this report. So the structures with poor conditions will be fed into the Connect RVA 2045 plan as bridge replacement and rehabilitation needs within the state of good repair funds. At this time, the presentation to the TAC is only information. We don't need any adoption at this time. What we want obviously is the TAC to review the document and provide any comments to us. We'll also present this to the RRTPO policy board probably next month, but won't ask them for adoption. This would be asked for adoption at the time when we ask for the adoption for the Connect RVA 2045 plan, which would be around September of next year. So just giving you a brief idea of what's in the structural inventory. It includes bridges, culverts, and tunnels. We don't have any tunnels in our region. It includes structures which is maintained by VDOT as well as other entities like public agencies, Henrico County, as well as City of Richmond, RMTA, and then private entities like Global Via, which maintains and owns I-895, as well as CXX, which maintains a few railroad crossing bridges. The exceptions are federal bridges, which is not listed in VDOT list, but we don't have any federal bridges in the Richmond region. If you go east, definitely the Hampton Roads region has a lot of federal bridges. The inventory includes all bridges regardless of their length. So even if it's a small bridge is included here. The culverts, only the culverts which have opening greater than 36 square feet. So 6 by 6. If it's more than 6 by 6 dimension, then that culvert is included. So overpasses, flyovers, and add-grade ramps, all of these are considered structures or bridges. And then finally, a bridge may have more than one structure. For example, if the eastbound or westbound or northbound or southbound have different structures, it's not connected, then those parts of a bridge I identified as 2 different structures. Example, the Mayo Bridge as well as Route 288. So now I'll just browse over the document and review it. Oh, sorry. Okay, so basically the table of contents, we have the executive summary, a 2-page executive summary, which provides all the information and also provides why we are doing it and how we are tracking it. Then we have some technical definitions, bridge and culvert as stated in Federal Register as well as FHWA. We have information for NBI, which is the National Bridge Inventory and what consists of that, as well as the NHS, the National Highway System. and then obviously the data source for the report. Then we have the regional bridge and culvert summary. We have the structures by jurisdiction, structures by MPO and rural area, structures which are structures which are within the NBI and NHS, and then structures by different highway system, ownership and age. And then we have the bridge conditions, how bridges are inspected and rated, and then structurally deficient bridges. And then we provide performance measures, the state performance measure as well as the federal performance measures. And the after that, the state of good repair program, which is the Commonwealth's prioritization project to funds structures as well as payments, and then also list the 2021 state of good repair eligible projects. So based on the report and the data snapshot from January 15th of 2020, we have a total of 1428 structures in the Richmond region, 784 bridges, and 329 culverts. Almost more than 1,100 are in the NBI, and then 315 are not listed in NBI. And we have the structures by jurisdiction. Chesterfield and Henrico have the most number of bridges. Again, we have the breakdown by the MPO and rural areas, and this might change after this meeting. And then we have the NBI as well as NHS structures. Also listed is the total number of structures by the highway system VDOT maintains, the interstate, primary, secondary, and urban. And the important fact is we also have that by ownership. So you can see that we have listed Chesterfield County, City of Richmond, Global Via, Henrico County, CSX, RMTA, Town of Ashland, VDOT, all own a number of bridges. Chesterfield County and Ashland, I guess both of them only maintain one culvert. This is just a map of the structures throughout the region. This is by ownership. And we have these structures by age as well. Then the important part is the inspection and rating. All the structures, whether it's owned and maintained by VDOT or not, the inspection is done by VDOT. And there is a general condition rating in which three components of the bridge, the deck, the superstructure, as well as the substructure, is inspected independently. And if any of these components have a general condition rating of 4 or below, they are deemed as structurally deficient. Whereas culvert only has one element, which is the whole culvert. And the same thing, if the culvert general condition rating is less than 5, or if it's 4 or below, then it's considered as structurally deficient culvert. So based on the 15th January 2020 snapshot, we have 65 bridges in the Richmond region, which can be called as bridges with poor condition or can be deemed as structurally deficient bridges. And this shows us the structurally deficient bridges by jurisdictions. This shows by ownership, and map shows all the structurally deficient bridges in the Richmond region. And also we have a table which lists all of those. We have some weight posted bridges as well, which might in the future may be closed. So these are also important. Some of them are structurally deficient, some of them are not. We have listed all those as well. And then we talk about the performance measures, the state performance measures, in which we track the structures in good or fair conditions. The state's target is 99% in interstate, 96% in primary, and 94% in secondary and urban streets. And you can see that the performance, the current performance, state performance is just slightly below that target. Whereas if you look at the Richmond region, it's slightly below the state's average. And then we have the federal performance measures, in which the criteria is that no more than 10% of the deck area of NBI structures on the NHS may be poor. So if it's more than 10%, state has to spend some significant amount to correct that. So as we can see now, the 2020 target for Virginia is 3.5%. The 4-year target, which would be reported in 2022, is 3%. And the current status for Virginia is 2.4, which is well below that. But for the Richmond region, it's a little bit slightly over that. It's 4.5%. Finally, we have a PACE for the State of Good Repair program, which is conducted by the Commonwealth every year, in which they look at 5 different factors to score the projects which are eligible for State of Good Repair bridge and culvert funding. So that's listed here, and this can be also, we have a link for the full document in VDOT as well. For FY21, this is the list for the eligible projects, the locality maintained projects. We can see that most of the projects are from Richmond, 1 project from Henrico as well. And this lists all the project, list of eligible projects which are maintained and owned by VDOT. So normally the determination of which projects to be funded is made by June end. But this year, since the SIP hasn't been finalized, we don't still know which of these bridges have been funded. So, and that could be updated if we get that information soon. And then after this, we have the jurisdictional profile, in which we have listed all the localities. We have a map of the locality with all bridges, different symbology for bridge and culvert, and whether the bridge is structurally deficient or not. And then it follows, after that, the table of all the bridges within that locality follows. And so on, we have that. So the yellow highlighted ones are the ones which are structurally deficient. So we have this for all the localities. And I have a last slide. So as I mentioned earlier, the outcome of this report obviously is to find the structurally deficient bridges which are eligible for replacement and rehabilitation funds. We can see that we have 65 structurally deficient bridges based on the January 15, 2020 data. I don't know any changes after that, which is 4.6% of total number of structures in the Richmond region. Similarly, if you see by ownership, VDOT has the most number of structurally deficient bridges, followed by the city of Richmond, which is 8, and then Henrico County. So all these 65 structurally deficient bridges were included in the Connect RVA 2045 needs issue inventory. And then for the project, universe of project, we have, based on the project inclusion guidelines, only those bridges which are structurally deficient are in the NBI, which is the National Bridge Inventory, and also in the NHS, National Highway System, qualify to be considered as the magnitude of long range transportation plan project. So far 16 projects have been have been selected based on that criteria. And those projects would be prioritized with other projects in the universe of projects for Connect RV 2045. But the difference is that these projects would only be prioritized for the, since these are maintenance funds, state of good repair funds cannot be used. Any other funds can be used for these. So would be prioritized within the SGR fund. We'll have a projection of what would be the SGR fund for the plan. And the final thing is that comparing to our previous study in 2015, we had 110 structures which were structurally deficient, and that number has come down to 65. So there has been a lot of progress in that. State has a commitment of correcting the structurally deficient bridge. And that's all I have. Please review the document. We have that in our website. It's also linked with the TAC agenda. And if you have any questions now, I can answer those as well.
Thank you, Sulabh. Does anyone have any questions?
Nora, this is Joe Vidennis. I have a question.
Go ahead, Joe.
And a comment too. So Sulabh, what is, I think you had it on your second to last slide. What is the bridge that's considered in the worst condition in the entire Richmond region? Maybe it was the previous slide. You had something in yellow.
So we don't have, so these are the bridges in Chesterfield County which are structurally deficient. So previously we had something called as sufficiency rating, in which we would use different criteria to rate the bridge, and it would have a score from 0 to 100. So based on those score, if the score is less, like if it's towards 0, if it's 5 or 10, that would be considered as the worst bridge. And then we could have ranked all the bridges in the Richmond region based on that. But currently, any bridge which has a general condition rating of 4 or below in any of the components, that's considered a structurally deficient bridge. And that's in the list. Whereas, let me show you the VDOT's okay, so this is the list for eligible structures by locality maintained structures, and this is the draft SGR. This is not the final score, and project haven't been funded yet, but based on the state of good repair scoring criteria, I think this one is the highest, 0.434, which is Route 161 Belt Boulevard. This is the only bridges which is maintained by the, not maintained by VDOT. Whereas if you look at the VDOT bridges, I guess New Kent, eastbound Pocahontas Trail, that's, I think, highest in this list of a draft state of good repair score of 0.586. So this is, I think this table is from highest to lowest. So you can see based on the state of good repair score.
So the lowest score would be the worst.
Yeah. But these are the ones which are being considered to be funded. They haven't made the final determination yet, but this is the list of all the bridges which could be funded, and they have been scored for these state of good repair funds.
I think Hanover may have the distinction of having the first tunnel. You mentioned that there were no tunnels in the Richmond region, and I would consider it a tunnel. We constructed a tunnel under Atlee Road when we with our recent Atlee Road Extended project. So we may have the first tunnel in the Richmond region.
Great.
But it's in great condition, 100% score. Thanks, Sulabh.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, not hearing anything. Thank you again, Sulap. Great information.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is the MPO boundaries and rural jurisdictions. Chet, are you going to give us a presentation? I know we went over this last month.
Yes, I was actually just going to go back to the agenda, but the discussion, the policy board had this discussion in their October meeting, and this memo that I'm putting on the screen now was presented to them with a recommendation to send it to this body, the TAC, for consideration. For those that haven't been brought up to speed on this, Powhatan County brought the request to the policy board to consider an expansion of the MPO study area and to include those member jurisdictions, Powhatan, Goochland, New Kent, and Charles City, that are only partially included right now in the TPO study area. And a number of reasons for that. And we listed that in the memo, and I'm not going to go through it unless folks have questions. But one, it would bring the TPO study area in line with the current Plan RVA study area, as well as the CVTA study area, the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, so that that boundary would match. It would also bring those 4 counties into full accessibility for to be able to apply for RSTP and CMEC funds in some cases for projects that may currently be outside of the MPO study area. So the policy board asked the TAC to consider it. We presented this information to you last month, and the policy board is asking for a recommendation at their December meeting. I did want to give you an update. So what we have in the agenda packet is the information that we shared before, the background on what the CFR says for metropolitan planning area boundaries. I highlighted specific sections that may be useful. The Regional Cooperation Act, the language there, the general duties of planning district commissions, and why it might make sense to expand the boundary to match, and then a Federal Highway Administration FAQ on adjusting the MPO boundaries. And then did some research, talked with Dan Lisi and Bob Crum from the last time this was discussed back in 2014, and found the slides that were shared for those of you that were working back then. So this is not a new discussion. It was discussed at that point, and for many of the same reasons, I think that it makes sense to consider expansion right now. I did have discussions following the last TAC meeting with leadership from each of the 4 rural counties, and had unanimous agreement that they are interested in expanding the boundaries of, again, Powhatan, Goochland, New Kent, and Charles City. We are not really discussing expansion of the Chesterfield southern boundary because right now that area is contained in the Tri-Cities MPO. So that wasn't the original request from Powhatan, and that hasn't been discussed. I don't believe that Chesterfield is interested in changing that. So at this point, what I have on the screen is the staff report. The requested action is recommendation for TPO approval to endorse and begin the process of updating its boundary to match the boundary of the Richmond Regional Planning District Commission and the Central Virginia Transportation Authority. Background information that was contained in the policy board memo from October. The staff recommendation is that the TAC supports this expansion. based a lot on primarily on the feedback from those 4 rural jurisdictions and their interest in being included, and the request of the policy board and discussions that have taken place at that point. So the following resolution, and I can read this, is presented for TPO Technical Advisory Committee review and recommendation. Resolved that the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization approves the update of the metropolitan planning area boundary to include the entirety of Powhatan, Goochland, New Kent, and Charles City counties. And be it further resolved that the RRTPO supports the initiation of necessary procedures with the Virginia Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, and the Governor of Virginia to officially recognize this boundary adjustment. I think we are all keenly aware that this isn't instantaneous. There's a federal process and a state process that needs to take place. And the recommendation right now would be simply to recommend that the policy board starts that process and begins the discussions with VDOT, I think initially, and then moving on to also discuss with Federal Highways and other partners to make this official. And in all honesty, we are still waiting for approval of the last MPO boundary change officially. We've been using the adjusted boundary from, I believe, 2017, but we don't have all of the signatures necessary yet, and we're still trying to work through that state process of getting the final approval for that. So I think that at this point, as I said, the recommendation is to start the process and start taking those necessary steps to move through it. Madam Chair, I don't have anything else to present. I'm sure there's discussion and willing to take any questions that people might have.
Okay, thank you for that. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
Madam Chair, this is Dirana, City of Richmond.
Go ahead, Dirana.
I guess I have a couple questions. Chet, if you don't mind, what was some of the reasons that it didn't move forward in 2014?
I think more than anything, the reasons it didn't move forward were political in nature. I don't think it was a matter of checking off boxes in terms of qualifying. I can scroll back and find it. The biggest reason I think that, yeah, I mean, the reasons that it could be expanded were valid and still apply. And it coincided, one of the big factors there was it doesn't just have to be the expected urbanized area that signifies what the boundary is. We're already past that now. The urbanized area is smaller than what our current MPO boundary is. It just so happens that what we have now matches some of the county lines, and the last time the boundary was adjusted, it was to match up with particular roads or other reasons. So I think that the recommendation back in 2014 was the reason to expand was to coincide, and I've got it on the bottom of the screen here, with the PDC boundary and regional growth forecasting areas. And that really corresponds to the planning district, the PDC 15 boundary. And that's the boundary that's currently accepted as the growth forecasting area. So that's one of those factors that qualifies for expanding of the boundary. And I can, Duran, I'm not sure if that.
No, that didn't answer the question. But it brings up another question. So when the I guess regulations talk about determination that the rural areas will be urban within 20 years, it sounds like you touched on that. Could you just correlate it to that language and what you're saying? I heard a little bit in regard to PDC, or I heard a couple of things, but I'm not sure if it answered that question.
Sure. Yeah. So what I've got on the screen. So this is from 23 CFR, and this is the Code of Federal Regulations that sets forth the reasons to consider for the metropolitan planning area boundaries. So item A here, and I'm going to highlight them if folks can see them. It shall be determined by agreement between the MPO and the governor. Those are the two bodies that are set forth in coming up with those boundaries. At a minimum, so A1 here, the MPA boundaries shall encompass the entire existing urbanized area as defined by the census, plus the contiguous area expected to become urbanized within a 20-year forecast period. That's what I was mentioning. So the contiguous area that's expected to become urbanized is already smaller than our current MPO boundaries. But there's lots of other whereases here. So the MPA boundaries may be further expanded to encompass the entire metropolitan statistical area. So that takes it way beyond what any of us are really considering. And that would be bringing in additional counties and other types of folks. So you can see at a minimum, it's probably the expected urbanized area. At a maximum, it's the MSA. But what I've highlighted down below here, so this is 2D. The MPA boundaries may be established to coincide with the geography of regional economic development and growth forecasting areas. That was the hook back in 2014, and I think it still applies here. And so further on in the supporting materials, we included the language about what the growth forecasting area is. And that is, I believe, in the Regional Cooperation Act. So here, and a lot of these highlighted areas really coincide with what we're talking about. So the regional forecasting area is to conduct strategic planning for the region, to identify mechanisms for the coordination of state and local interests, to conduct studies on issues and problems of regional significance, to collect and maintain demographic, economic, and other data concerning the region and member localities, and act as a state data center affiliate in cooperation with the Virginia Employment Commission. All those things apply and refer to the work that we do at the TPO as well as the planning district.
Okay, so again, the main thing you think for 2014 was that the political atmosphere was different.
I believe so. I mean, I wasn't in the room, but I think that's, I don't believe that decisions were made based on a failure to qualify for some of these measures that I'm sharing with you today.
Okay, I have two more questions, Madam Chair. So I know we talked about the impact to the MPO as far as these rural counties becoming a part of the MPO, but are there any impacts to the rural funding outside of RRTPO funding, them coming into the MPO?
The recognition of each of these four counties as fully urban in terms of the MPO boundary would disqualify the TPO from receiving $58,000 a year in rural transportation funds. Mm-hmm. That amount has not changed for a long time. So it's not like we're seeing increases in rural transportation funding. It's currently being used for planning assistance, and it helps the TPO to fund some staff work to provide planning assistance for each of the four rural jurisdictions. In my discussions with leadership from each of those jurisdictions, the opportunity to apply for RSTP funds for all four of those jurisdictions greatly outweighed the ability to have planning assistance to the tune of that $58,000. So that was considered by the four jurisdictions, but didn't factor in their decision to want to be included.
And again, that is direct funding to the MPO regarding the rurals. But again, you know, does it impact any VDOT, DRPT, any other funding that they receive currently as a rural versus when they would come into the MPO?
I do not believe so. No. I talked with Daryl Johnson about that from VDOT, and he mentioned the 58,000, but that's the only thing. I'm not sure if Liz or Tiffany have any other insight today, but I don't believe there's any other funding resources that are impacted by this change.
Hey Chet, this is Tiffany. So with the 5303, that is a set apportionment. So that's just based off your MPO. I will say that there may be some changes if you do grow in population, because I think that the state apportionment, how that splits out, is based off the population. But in general, it shouldn't have that much impact depending on your boundary size and that expanse. But we can look into that if that is a concern of the technical advisory committee, and I can report back to you on that.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Well, I guess this is my last comment. Just in asking some of the people that were a part of the process in 2014, it just was some talk about Powhatan had tried to, I don't know, just circumvent a process. So that's why it kind of made me just want to understand exactly what again we're endorsing and that we're supporting. I think the city of Richmond, as a regional partner, fully supports the incorporation of the 4 counties fully into the MPO, but we want to ensure that we understand the process for the entire process, for the expansion. And I know that it's spelled out in the documents that you've given us, but I think that there are going to be a number of actions that you will take in order for the process to occur. And I would feel more comfortable if I knew what those actions were going to be versus endorsing, okay, go out and seek the expansion versus how you're going to do it. That's just my comments, but that's what I did want to add into it, that the process in which this designation would occur, again, is it the 4, a locality submits a resolution that they support the expansion, and then it's just, a approval from the rest of the localities that, okay, it's okay to begin this expansion, or are there other things that occur to make the process happen? And just seeing all of that in front of me would be helpful.
Thank you for that. Chet, I don't know if you had anything else to add.
No, I mean, I think in response to Dorna's last question, we will need to investigate that. I mean, it's a policy board process in working with VDOT. So, I mean, I think any supporting documentation would certainly be helpful, as it always is, from each of the 4 jurisdictions, or all 9. But I think the policy board would decide in December whether they're ready to move forward in that process, and we'd certainly want VDOT to weigh in at that point in terms of what that process might actually entail.
I'm sorry, Nora, may I?
Go ahead, Joe.
Yes. So, just frankly, I find it all a bit confusing, but maybe that's just me. But so let me just try to restate and see. Somebody correct me if I have this wrong. But as I understand it, the current MPO boundary is established based upon this this urbanized area and the expected growth over the next 20 years to establish an urbanized boundary. I think I murdered that a little bit, but basically what I'm trying to say is that the current rules allow establish the current MPO boundaries, and the areas that are outside, the areas that we're talking about in the 4 jurisdictions, those same rules would allow the expansion. So what we're saying here, really, it comes down to is like those localities that have their that are within the current MPO boundary, they're good. Do we want to allow those that fall outside those boundaries to come in basically under the same rules? So we're in, we're good, but do we say, well, sorry, we're not going to play by the same rules, or are we going to play by the same rules? And the rules that allowed us to be part of it should apply to those areas outside, and they should be allowed to participate as well on an equal footing. Is that really what it comes down to?
I think that your assessment is good. I don't, like I said, I don't know the reasons why exactly the current boundaries were set, but they are larger than the urbanized area. So I think the same rules could apply here as well, just like you're saying, Joe. Yes.
Because I think, looking at Hanover specifically, it's hard to really consider portions of Hanover to be urbanized, okay, or to ever be urbanized, right? And so we're good. The question is, do we feel the same way that, New Kent ought to be viewed in that same light? That's what it comes down to me, I guess. Are we being equitable? Are we being balanced in how we apply the boundary? Or do we have two sets of rules?
And Madam Chair, if I could, and I think that it's definitely true, but from a locality that truly is urban, every other non-urban place is really intruding on our funding, and continuing to add additional non-urban areas without with a process that is competitive but somewhat subjective due to spending of funds or completion of projects. We just want to, really ask the questions and be sure that not only is it something that's fair, but fair to our residents that are within a truly urban boundary.
That's a good point as well, Dirona. Do I have any other comments?
This is Sharon with Henrico. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to and not to argue the point, and I appreciate that, Dorona, because that's kind of selfishly what I'm thinking in representing Hanover. But one of the points that was made in Chet's presentation was that the highest priorities will rise to the top, regardless of what how large the area is that we're considering. So if you expand the boundaries, if you still have a strong project, it's still going to score near the top.
Yes, I totally agree. And like I said, overall, I think we, being a good regional partner, would welcome the expansion if that is what the policy board and everyone agrees to.
Thank you all. Sharon, did you have a comment?
I did. I had two questions or comments. One was about CMAQ eligibility. I think it was mentioned last time, but I was wondering if Chet could confirm. So of the 4 rural localities or more urban, so Charles City and New Kent would be eligible for CMAQ funding, while Goochland and Powhatan would not, since they weren't in a non-attainment area. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Charles City for sure. Sulab, can you verify?
Yeah, I don't think so. New Kent would be included. It's just Charles City.
Okay. And then the advantage of, so rough in 2022, we were going to have to look at the MPO boundaries anyway. So I guess the advantage of doing it a year early would be that it takes a while for this process, we've learned, since there was a 2017 amendment that's still being finalized. And I guess it would give the 4 other localities opportunity to participate in an additional RSTP CMAQ cycle. Does that sound right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, on that point, we still have, even in 2022, we still have to go through the process of updating, correct?
We have to assess it in 2022, but I think a point to raise is unless we have a huge population expansion in the next 6 months, we're not going to see any census changes that are going to change the boundary past what we currently have. Our current boundary is well beyond the urbanized area and what's expected in the next 20 years. So I don't think the 2020 census is going to impact the boundary at all.
Okay. I heard someone else had a question.
Nora, this is Andrew Pompey. Can I go ahead and make a motion?
You are free to make a motion. I don't know if there was any other comments to be heard, but that's up to you, sir.
A motion that the TAC recommend that the RRTPO metropolitan planning area be expanded to include Powhatan County, Goochland County, New Kent County, and Charles City County in their entirety. And that, the TPO initiate all necessary steps to have that boundary officially recognized.
I have a motion.
Nora, this is Tom Coleman. I'd be willing to second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion from Andrew and a second from Tom Coleman to forward along the resolution to the TPO to update the MPO area, the MPA boundary to include the entirety of Powhatan, Goochland, New Kent, and Charles City counties. Chet, do I take any more comments or that, or just go ahead and ask for the vote?
You're more than welcome to have a further discussion if you'd like.
Okay, is there any additional discussion on the item? I'll say for me, I personally feel that this item should be discussed in 2022 when we have the new census data and the fact that we're already beyond the urbanized area. I don't know that means that we should keep adding on to it. Perhaps parts of Hanover shouldn't be in there. I mean, and that's just my opinion.
Nora, I just want to mention that the parts of Hanover are included because it's in the air quality maintenance area. So it's current urbanized area plus areas which are supposed to be urbanized in next 20 years plus areas which are under maintenance or non-attainment. So that's why the areas which are rural in Hanover are included in it.
Thank you, Sulab. Very helpful. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Ms. Mueller, could you please take roll call or the roll call for the vote?
Yes, Madam Chair. Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
No.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Walker. Moving on, Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas.
No.
Would you repeat that, sir?
No.
Thank you. Henrico County, Ms. Meidler.
Aye.
New Kent County, Ms. Leduc.
Aye.
Powhatan County, Mr. Pompey.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Ms. Clark.
The
Ms.
runner,
Clark.
you're muted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, are you there, Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Okay, what's your vote?
My vote is no.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
I choose to abstain from the vote.
GRTC, Ms. Torres.
Aye.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Aye.
And VDOT, Ms. McAdory.
Abstain.
Okay, I'm just going to count real quick and I'll repeat back to you what the vote was.
Ms. Mueller, not to interrupt your county, but was Ms. Walker able to vote?
Who?
Ms. Walker?
No. I don't know if she's still with us. Let me look at the participant list.
I'm still here.
Okay. Chessa, what was your vote? We could not hear you.
Oh, I voted yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I have 7 ayes. 3 noes and 2 abstains.
I concur.
I concur as well. Thank you all. So the next item on the agenda is transportation agency updates. First, we have VDOT. Ms. McAdory, are you here with us?
I am, and I also got my mute button to undo pretty quickly. I was getting a little nervous. Let's see. You guys can hear me, I assume? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Good, thank you. I will try to be brief. Let's see. The first update is about the CTB meetings. Last time they met was in October. A couple of presentations of interest were given. One on the preliminary Commonwealth Transportation Fund assumptions. Basically, it's the revenue forecast going forward and how we're going to update the FY21 SIP, which I will mention a little bit more about below. There was also a presentation on a study that VDOT did about cost estimation and bidding, which I know might be of interest to some of you all. So if you want that presentation or a link, I can provide that. And then there was a presentation on the round 1 public meeting results from the I-64-664 study. The next meeting on the website, it does not yet show the November 24th meeting, but we have heard there will be a November CTB meeting. Once I find out that's the exact date, I believe it's on the 24th, but once we nail that down, I'll let Chet know to get that out to everyone. There is definitely going to be December 8th and 9th. The December 8th will be the workshop at 10 a.m. December 9th, there will be an action meeting at 9 a.m. And then moving on to Smart Scale, no real changes from last time. We're still, VDOT is still moving on with validation and scoring. We're anticipating that being complete in December and hopefully taking results, or at least a recommended scoring scenario to the CTB in January of 21. Assuming that goes forward and is approved, the results will be publicized shortly thereafter. Going back to what I mentioned earlier at the CTB in October for the SIP revisions, basically the FY20 SIP was revised. Well, let me back up. There is a FY21 revised budget that's going to be presented to the CTB in December. And there's also going to be an official revenue estimate for the FY22 year available in December also. That'll be going to the CTB. As far as the current 6-year improvement program, which is the FY21, it's going to remain in effect until June of 21, at which time the 22 SIP would go over. However, it's been revised to include a lot of the new funding that's come through. So you guys approved CMAQ and RSTP a while back. That's now been incorporated in revenue sharing and transportation alternative programs. All those fundings that were approved at the beginning of FY21 are now incorporated into the SIP. And so that SIP will live on through the life until FY22. We will begin development of FY22 SIP as usual and later in in early 21, like January to March timeframe. And you guys will be brought in the loop on that as well. As far as our studies, we've got the 4 ongoing studies on 95, 85, 64, 295. The only real change on that is that the second round of public meetings for the 64, 664 study is live. It's a virtual public meeting. There's a MetroQuest survey. I've listed the website there. Please feel free, 64 has a huge impact to this MPO area. So please feel free to both pass that along to constituents and also to other interested parties. And please also feel free to fill out that survey. I think for the round 1, we got over 2,500 responses. I think it might have even been higher than that. So we're getting a lot of good responses to the virtual involvement. And then moving on to public hearings, again, there's nothing in the MPO area except for the I-64. And Chet, if you'll scroll down, I just included on the next page the ad. So if you guys want to go to the 64 website, you can click on that link there and do the update or do the MetroQuest survey. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The next update we have on the agenda is DRPT. Ms. Tabinski.
Thank you, Nora. And I think Chet has my agency update. So I have a few items to provide for the Technical Advisory Committee today. First off is related to our FY21 6-year improvement program. We have posted the draft SIP on our webpage for public comment. The link is available there for anyone who would like to review and see what items are included in our draft SIP. This is focused on just FY21 allocations for projects that are needed, such as operating assistance and critical capital projects that will move forward based on a readiness evaluation. And so it's important that instead of the typical 6 years for our SIP, this is only for 1 year. And so it doesn't include our typical 5-year capital or operating plan. We anticipate that we will do this rolling into our FY22 SIP. We anticipate that CTB will take action at the December meeting to approve the draft SIP, and I'll be able to provide an update on that once that action has been taken. Related to FY22, we are going to be starting our application cycle on December 1st, and this will remain open through February 1st. We are currently coordinating right now our workshops that we typically host for all of our grant recipients and applicants. One to review what has been awarded for FY21, and then the other to review FY22's application process. To note, there are 3 dates here. They're all going to be virtual workshops. There was a separate press release that was sent out for the Section 5310, and I think we're hosting roughly 6 workshops. I do want to emphasize that anyone who is looking to apply for Section 5310 must register and attend one of the webinars in order to be considered eligible for funding this year. And so for the Central Virginia region, that workshop is going to be November 17th. But if that does not work with your staff, I think there's some flexibility to apply for the other ones. If there's a desire for additional information or for the links for those workshops, I can forward that to Chet and Nicole, and they can distribute it out to the TAC. Besides that, our actual other workshops are kind of our commuter assistance and then our standard public transportation workshops. Both of those are being held December 1st. I believe that the public transportation one is going to be in the morning from 9 to 10:30, and then the commuter assistance is going to be in the afternoon from like 1 to 2:30. And so, I encourage you all to apply. Besides that, Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, they actually just held their inaugural meeting on October 26th. All the information on the agenda, and I believe meeting minutes are available on that link there. But if there's a request for more information, I'd be glad to go ahead and get that to you all. And that is all I have for my update for today. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tiffany. Anyone have any questions? Okay, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I'd like to go ahead and add Ride Finders and GRTC for an update. So Mr. O'Keefe, are you on with us, and would you like to provide an update? Not sure that I see his name here.
Nora, I don't believe he's with us today.
Okay, Ms. Torres, do you have anything for GRTC?
Good morning. The only update I'll give is that we have our board meeting on November 17th, if anyone wants to tune in.
Thank you, Adrian. So the next item is future meeting topics, and so that is on in your agenda package on page 29. Thank you for listing those. As you all know, the RSTP CMAQ application process just wrapped up, and Miles is having meetings with all of the localities. I'm sure that too will be an ongoing conversation in future meetings. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add to this list?
One clarification for folks who weren't on the policy board meeting last time. There is a conflict with the Governor's Transportation Conference on December 3rd. So the policy board took action that the executive committee will not meet, and the policy board will meet at 8:30. To hopefully allow folks time to attend that meeting and then also tune in to the governor's conference following that. So that will hopefully, we're still hoping that that Director Mitchell will be able to provide an update on the passenger rail program. But I know that she has commitments to the governor's conference as well. So I will let everyone know as soon as possible about that topic.
Thank you, Chet. Anything anyone would like to have added? Hearing nothing else, we're moving on. Any TAC member comments? Any locality comments? Okay. The next meeting is December 8th, and if there's no other items for the group, I will call for adjournment. Thank you all.